Dr. Thomas Tenkate is an associate professor and was director at Ryerson, the School of Occupational and Public Health at Ryerson. He's worked in Australia, the US and Canada in the fields of environmental health and occupational health and safety. He's been in academia for 18 years, has worked for the government. He has qualifications in industrial hygiene, management, education, and risk management. He has a Doctor of Public Health from the University of Alabama, and his interests includes risk assessment in occupational settings. And I just want to also acknowledge people behind the scenes, and I know Thomas may do this as well, Desiree Kramer as well, who's sort of pushed this from behind the scenes, and also big just acknowledgement of Daniel Drolet, who's done work for OCAD before, and it's fabulous that Daniel Drolet has been able to work with you on this, Thomas. So over to you, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to do a brief slide presentation and then do a demonstration of our latest CHAP tool. And so I previously presented at a previous October when we did one of our earlier tools. And basically the CHAP tool project has sort of been going on for a couple of years now. And we've had a number of, we've been fortunate to have a number of partners at different stages of the process and different funders. Just like to acknowledge the research team and particularly for the tool I'm going to show today. Daniel Drolet was our IT consultant and worked on developing the tool. We've had like OCAL and a number of partners have been involved at each of the steps of the process. Our current tool is called the CHAP risk tool, and we've had the original funding came from the Ontario Ministry of Labour, and the CHAP risk funding came from WorkSafe BC. So where this all came from is that really the idea that there's a lot of chemicals currently available and used in workplaces, but only a small number have authority of occupational exposure limits. And so particularly for small business, there's a lot of evidence that assessing hazard and risk is quite challenging. So we know that exposure to chemicals causes a large disease burden, and so when you combine that with the fact that small and medium-sized businesses employ the majority of Canadians, and that they can have a higher risk for injury for their employees, and that they find assessing risk of chemicals quite difficult, that combination means that you know there's a need for tools and assistance for small business. Yeah, so the background to the CHAP tools is that we wanted to develop tools that help small business to better understand the hazards associated with the chemicals they use, to be able to do a simple hazard or risk assessment. And that's where the steps in the process we've gone through we started at hazard assessment and we've moved to risk assessment. And then through that, to be able to help small business to be able to prioritize what the most hazardous or risky chemicals that they use are, so that then they can focus their efforts on managing those chemicals. We wanted to be able to link this to WHMIS, and with the idea that these sorts of tools can help a workplace, help them contextualize WHMIS to their own workplace. And we wanted to be able to use information that's available in safety data sheets, because for small businesses, that's really where they're going to be getting their chemical hazard information from, is the safety data sheets that come with each chemical. So currently we have 3 versions of our CHAP tools. Our CHAP, what we call CHAP, what's a paper version of a hazard assessment for 10 chemicals. And when we trialed that was funded by the Ministry of Labour. We trialed that, and feedback was that it would be good to have that turn that into a electronic tool. And so we felt that, well, okay, what's the easiest way and the cheapest way to make an electronic tool was to use existing software. And so we landed on using Excel and developed a spreadsheet version of the hazard assessment. And so we had two versions, eCHAP Basic, what did a hazard assessment of 10 chemicals, and then eCHAP Advanced, what did a hazard assessment of an unlimited number of chemicals. And so, and once we went out and trialed that in workplaces, the feedback was, well, that's great to do a hazard assessment, but it'd be great to extend this to a risk assessment. And so that's where the CHAP risk tool idea came from, and we were able to get funding from WorkSafe BC to develop that. This tool is finished, and we're just in the process of updating our website to make it available. And so in the next week or so, it will be available on our website. That's there, ryerson.ca. Chemical hazard assessment prioritization. And so you'll be able to you can download the top 3 already from the website, and this CHAP risk will be available along with instructional videos and user guides. And so the basis of CHAP risk and the basis of all the CHAP tools is the hazard banding process. And hazard banding is a way of classifying chemical hazards into sort of groups or bands with five levels. Level A or band A, the lowest hazard rating, and then level E, the highest hazard rating. And the process that we use comes from taking information from the safety data sheets, and specifically from the hazard section 2 hazard identification section. And basically, the safety data sheets for each chemical should have a series of hazard statements. Sometimes they'll also have codes along with the statements. But and so the approach that we used that was developed in Europe and that we've adapted it for here basically takes the hazard statements and uses that information to create hazard bands. And so for people who sort of may not be aware, there's 3 types of hazard statements. There's physical hazard statements, there are health hazard statements, and then there are environmental hazard statements. So we're taking the information of each of these types of statements to build in essence, a hazard profile. And so what we're asking people to do is to in essence get the safety data sheet of their chemical and look in section 2 and identify these hazard statements. So that aspect of sort of building the hazard profile was the realm of the first series of tools, and then to create a risk assessment tool, we really sort of thought about, well, what would be the simplest way to do this, and so we sort of looked at other tools and identified Kosh Essentials as a good tool to sort of base our tool on. And so for that, the risk assessment is based on a combination of assessing the hazard posed by the chemical and then assessing worker exposure. And so this is a page out of the tool just to show that we have both a hazard assessment component and then a exposure assessment component that then lead to a risk level assessment. And so what you can see here is that we're asking about whether or not there are physical or environmental hazard statements, and that's just a yes or no answer. But then specifically, if there are health hazard statements, then we're wanting people to identify each of those statements and add them to the table. And so our earlier versions of that focused on hazard assessment did something like this, where basically our earlier versions did this first part on the left-hand side, and our latest version, our CHAP risk, does this part and adds the exposure and risk assessment components to it. And so what you can see is based on each hazard statement has a specific hazard banding allocation for different uptake routes, and then the combination of those hazard band levels come together to give you an overall hazard hazard level. And I'll demonstrate this in a few minutes. Our development process for the tools has been using what we'd call a user-focused designed process. And this is where we really want to get end users involved in providing feedback on what the tools are about. And so this is our model that we've used across each of the tools, where we basically have a reference group of experts and industry stakeholders who help provide overall guidance for the project. We then want to develop a tool while recruiting workplaces, and we develop the tool by basically reviewing what is already out there. So we reviewed a whole range of different tools. We recruit for the CHAP risk project. We recruited 6 workplaces. We then we do a pre-trial evaluation where we get to understand what the workplace is about and what they do. Then we go through it. We have a training program. We had 59 people go through the training. Then the workplace takes the version of the tool we have at the time. They trial it with the chemicals in their workplace, and then we come back and ask them what their feedback is like. And so, overall, we had 56 people use this different versions of the CHAP risk tool, and as you can see, and then we both have a qualitative and a quantitative evaluation process that feeds into developing the final product. And our current version is version 58. And so that's this and a number of iterations that we've gone through to develop the final tool for the CHAP risk tool. Some differences between the CHAP tools and other tools. We really wanted to focus on small businesses and use by say occupational health and safety reps or joint health and safety committees. So we really wanted to try and have something that was simple to use. Because of the nature of that industry sector, we wanted something that people didn't have to connect to the internet for. So it was really about using sort of software that people had that they were familiar with versus asking them to connect to the internet. And that was based on the feedback that we'd received all along from the various workplaces we worked with. And workplaces were keen for their assessment results to sort of reside at their own workplace versus sort of going into a database on a website. The focus of the tools is also to not just to do an individual assessment, but to allow people to do multiple assessments and then to be able to prioritize and see the ranking of what the hazards or risks are. And these tools are designed to be freely available versus some tools do have require licenses and fees. And they are all Canadian based and trialed here, but we feel because of the safety data sheet and globally harmonized system of chemical management and that having consistency across borders, then these tools also have applicability in other countries. Some of the challenges that we've found with our CHAP tools that they really rely on the accuracy and completeness of safety data sheets. And if anyone's sort of looked at safety data sheets and used them, they'll know that the quality and the completeness is quite variable. There's this sort of garbage in, garbage out aspect that the outcome is really based on what people put in, and so and that's also reliant on the accuracy of the safety data sheets. But we also wanted to make sure that the tools were simple enough that to minimise this sort of errors in inputting. Because of the level of funding that we had, we couldn't really develop tools from scratch. So we really had to use or base our tools on what's already being developed. But really, so in essence, this is really a knowledge translation and knowledge exchange project versus the development of a tool from scratch, such as the silica control tool. And so because of that, our tools have the limitations of them that the other tools have that we've based it on, such as we can only do assessment of solids and liquids, but not gases, and the hazard banding is really focused on health hazards and doesn't have much sort of ability to or have a lot of quantification of the environmental or physical hazards. The CHAP risk tool, the exposure assessment is subjective, and so and some workplaces have said that they do find it difficult to determine and access that information, but we've tried to keep it as simple as possible, and so there's pluses and minuses with that. From a technical perspective, the CHAP risk uses something called ActiveX controls and it's part of the macros, and at this stage that's not able to be used on Apple or Mac products. So it's really meaning that we've sort of narrowed who can use it based on what hardware they have. And one thing we found was that we've really tried to target sort of small workplaces. But what we've found through the trialing of the CHAP risk tool was that it's really seems to be needing people. The users need to have a higher skill and knowledge level than maybe a frontline worker. So it really needs to be, say, an health and safety professional, and sometimes it might be a little bit too much for a member of a health and safety committee. But I suppose we've tried to keep it as simple as possible. But despite that, it seems to also be a little bit too much for some people. Some of the benefits that we've found with the tools that they improve worker and employer understanding of WMIS, so there can be improved compliance there. It's helping engage workers in managing the chemicals they use. Workers and employers have a better understanding of their workplace-specific chemical hazards and risks. It helps the workplaces to develop more effective and workplace-specific safe handling practices and improves decision-making for control measures. That's the end of the presentation, and I was wanting to switch over to doing a demonstration. So while I do that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Thomas. There are a couple in the chat window, and Kevin, feel free. I forgot to ask if you wanted to ask them, but I will mention the one from Peter while we're perusing together. But Peter's asking Thomas, and again, kudos on the initiative, and if the risk assessment counts for the mixtures.
It counts for mixtures from the perspective of we're dealing with a chemical product that might include a range of ingredients, but it's not accounting for once you take one product that you have a safety data sheet for and maybe mix it or use it in an operation with another product that you have another safety data sheet for. So it doesn't account for that, but it's accounting for products that consist of a range of ingredients.
Thank you. So yeah, sorry, he does mention effect of mixtures. So yeah, you're not talking about synergistic or additive effects of only what is available on the SDS sheet as the product itself, as the raw product. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, if you look at the bigger, government risk assessments, the US EPA risk assessments, for example, for trichloroethylene, they really do the risk assessment for the pure chemical itself. They don't actually look at the product and all the different constituents within the product, and this does. So I just thought I'd add that.
Thanks, Kevin. Are there any other questions for Thomas before he gives us a demo?
I just think I wanted to add, and Thomas has done really, and his team's done really fantastic work. It's sort of like a step up from Koch Essentials. So, the paper by Arnone was actually factored into this work, and it also deals with acutely acting chemicals as well, which Koch Essentials doesn't deal with.
Well, I think there might be some more questions maybe after I do the demonstration. So I'm happy to sort of start that. Can you see the spreadsheet? Is it showing up?
Yes. Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Great. So this is the home page for the CHAP risk spreadsheet, and I think if if you've used any of Daniel's previous tools, there's a sort of common flavor to this, and we're really very grateful for Daniel being available to participate in and work on this this project with us. So basically, we start with a home page. There is a disclaimer that people would, if the first time you open it, you come to. This homepage is really just trying to give you a little bit of information about what the tool is about, and this is a step-by-step sort of flow chart of what to do. What we have done is also developed like a user guide and then a series of video instructional videos where we talk about where to find particularly about safety data sheets and where to find the information, and then a demonstration as well. So those videos can, combined with the tool, we hope will help people use it more effectively. But hopefully, if you just open the tool, you should be able to work through it okay as well. So if we click on our start button, what I've done is preset this as a demonstration, maybe saying that our organisation's the Town of Fun. We're our work site that we're going to do the assessment of is the Fun Factory, and we're going to look at our scenario. Is basically a scenario we're describing it as is basically putting a boundary around what area or process or location that you wanted that your chemicals are coming from. So it's just a way of saying, well, if you're going to choose 10 chemicals, which 10 chemicals are you going to choose? If you want to do 10 chemicals, then maybe do it based on a particular process, or you could say our scenario is our top 10 chemicals we think are the worst ones, or something like that. So basically, the first page, you enter your chemicals that you want to do your assessment on. And so if I enter a third chemical here, and you can do up to 10 in one go, what you can see is we've got little information buttons that will tell you at each step of the process what to do. So with sort of a step-by-step approach, you've got navigation buttons up the top here. So now if we've added in our chemicals that we're doing our assessment on, our next step is going to that form page that I'd shown you in the slide deck. And what you can see is that we've stepped it by steps 1 to step 8. The first step is finding the chemical that you want to do your assessment on, and this is the chemicals that are that you've entered in the previous sheet. So you start there, and if I'd put further details about the chemical, it would be added here, and then you come to the hazard assessment, where you're saying, well, what are does our product have physical or environmental hazard statements? And it's a yes/no question, and all this information on this side is coming from section 2 of the safety data sheet. So if we say yes, then the question is it an acutely toxic substance, and is that listed? We'll say no for this case. And then we come down to our health hazard statements, and we're wanting people to enter each health hazard statement. And so if the SDS lists hazard codes along with the statement, you can find the codes here. And so if you choose, say, a H300 code, that statement is fatal if swallowed. Then you add that to the table, and so it's it's providing the hazard banding levels for that statement. And so then you just keep adding your statements that are listed, and it just keeps adding them to the table. You can see that this one is coming up. Well, I've already done fatal if swallowed there. Maybe do that guy there. And so what you can see is it's come up as a very hazardous substance based on the hazard banding approach that is on the basis of the Arnone et al. Work. It's come up as a hazard level E. And so now we've done our hazard assessment, we now come up to our exposure assessment. And so this is coming from both the way the product is used in, the process or operation it's used in, as well as information from section 9 of the safety data sheet. So if we say this one's a liquid, so it could either be a liquid or a solid. If we say this product is a liquid, we're then going to ask people two questions. What is the operating temperature? So what is the temperature that the operation is undertaken at, that the chemical is used in? So if that was room temperature, you would put in 25 degrees Celsius, and then you want to know what its boiling point, and the boiling point is coming from section 9 of the safety data sheet. So maybe if we just say it's 90 degrees Celsius, and those two aspects come together to give an assessment of volatility of the substance, and the volatility comes from this graph over here. What you can see that these results here come up with our result here. So that's that step 5. But if it was a solid, it would ask you how dusty is the solid to use, and we've got information about what does that mean. And then we come up to how much do you use? Do you use a small amount, a medium amount, or a large amount? And we've got some detail, information about that. So maybe we use a small amount of this product, and so you can see its exposure level is come out as an exposure level 2, out of 4. And so you can see the risk matrix has already been populated by hazard level and exposure level, but the last piece is how often do you use it and for how long. And so in total, do you use it for more or less than 15 minutes a day? And what you'll see is if you use it for more than 15 minutes a day, the hazard level changes because the underlying matrix changes. But say if we just say that we don't use it for more than 15 minutes a day, our overall risk level then is a risk level 3, and the control approach is linked to the risk level. And so we have 4 different control approaches that we recommend based on the risk level. And basically this exposure assessment and risk assessment and control approach is based on the work of CHAP Essentials. And so now we've completed our assessment, we can then send that to our summary sheet. Fingers crossed. Okay, so and our summary sheet then lists the chemicals that we've done the assessment on. So I'd previously pre-populated it with 2 chemicals, and now I've added our 3rd chemical. And the details here in the first 4 columns come from the information that was put into the scenario sheet, and these last 3 columns come from your assessment, from the form sheet. And what you can see is it's giving you the listing of what the hazard levels are, the exposure levels calculated, and what the risk levels are, and what the recommended control approaches. And it gives you the a qualitative rating for each of those. If you want further information, you can go to what we're calling our controls page that describes the risk levels and the control approaches in more detail. But really what the outcome is really this summary sheet that basically through that process, if you repeat it for each chemical, you will get a listing of your chemicals, and it helps you sort of see, well, okay, this chemical 1, it's at the highest hazard, is based on its properties, toxicological properties, it's the highest hazard, and it's also the highest risk because of how we use it, our exposure level. But this chemical 3, even though it's the highest hazard, the way we use it is not as much, and so its overall risk is a little bit lower. Whereas the chemical 2 is the least risky. And so this really helps workplaces sort of prioritize, identify what are the most risky and most hazardous chemicals, so that and gives them a system to do that, and then they're able to maybe look at what are the control measures they already have in place, and look at which ones are recommended that we recommend, but also which are recommended under the safety data sheet for each chemical. So that's pretty much the demonstration of the tool, and happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
If I can just ask a question, maybe before going to the chat box. just want to say firstly that one of the great features is that when you look at the hazard assessment, you can actually look at the route of exposure. So, for example, you know, a lot of chemicals can go through the skin, and you can kind of see that through the assessment here as well. And you don't see that in COSH Essentials. So just a question, like a broader question, Thomas, and a more detailed question. Just your observations with using SDSs in Canada. Obviously, you need hazard statements for the tool to work and boiling points. So I'm just wondering if you have a general comment about that. And that's the first question. The second question is, with COSH Essentials, where the hazard statement is lacking, then it defaults to an A hazard, which could be a trap for the unwary. I'm just wondering if you'd mind answering those two before we go to.
Okay. Yeah. So we have found that that there's quite a lot of variability in the the SDSs that are available, and most of the time the SDS is available and has health hazard statements in it. As a separate an aligned project to this, we have been doing work on doing a review and assessment of SDSs from a readability and usability perspective, and as in SDSs as a hazard communication tool, and they don't tend to come up very well when you sort of run them through the various standardized approaches for readability and usability and whatever. And so it is I think there's a lot of work to be done on the SDSs and their role in from a hazard communication perspective, and so but definitely that has been a question that people have asked us. We want to do an assessment of our chemical, but it doesn't provide there's no hazard statements, and so the way we did that was just to build in a again, just like say COSH Essentials does, a default that if there wasn't any hazard statements, it comes up with a hazard level A. But that's really the best we could do based on the existing tools that we're using, and so that's definitely one of those aspects for further development of this. And we can see that there's a need for, say, more refinement around physical and environmental hazards, and also some of these aspects that we've identified, as in what do you do if you don't have a health hazard statement, or if you don't know what the boiling point is, or if you can't find that, or whatever else. So there's those sorts of things that we know that are there, but I suppose the idea is if we can get this out there and we get feedback on people using it, at least hopefully this helps people move down the track of better hazard and risk assessment, and then we can keep refining it. I don't think that this tool is finished. It's sort of the starting point for further development.
Thanks, Thomas. We got there's a question in the chat box, and I don't know, sometimes it's really good for the person who put the question in to ask the question. I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself, Lisa Holsworth. Did you want to ask the question, or shall I?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to ask the question. And again, full disclosure, I'm CEO of a company who's built software to do very similar work. And what we find, we work with large organizations, and what I found in this business was it's mind-boggling how many chemicals people use in the workplace. An example, a small municipality would use over 300 chemicals, a larger one over 2,000 hazardous chemicals. So this is, you would be required to do this for pretty much every hazardous chemical product. Do you foresee building automation? I know you said you didn't want the beta testers or the people that you were working with indicated that they didn't want to work in the cloud. But I just wondered whether you envision staying as you know, so a tool that's downloaded and used just in the company, or whether you're looking at being able to leverage information through the cloud so that you can actually share some of the, you know, hazard information with smaller companies who don't have resources to do this.
Yeah, so definitely, like I would see that you know, something like this, that if it was linked to a some sort of database of safety data sheets and some you know, like that would provide a lot of benefit. Whereas at this stage, you know, you know, the amount of funding that we've been able to attract for this has been relatively, you know, small in comparison to the cost of sort of doing those sorts of activities. So we've sort of had to be able to sort of build and test something that we could with the money that we had. But definitely that sort of, I think for some workplaces, you know, this aspect of having a spreadsheet that they could use in-house with and then, you know, they pull up their own safety data sheets, whatever system they use, you know, and do it that way. That's going to be good for a lot of businesses, but I know a lot of other workplaces would prefer to have it sort of all automated, and then as in more linked between the safety data sheets and the sort of other hazard information that you're requiring for this. And so you know, that would be a great thing to be able to do, but at this stage, you know, I suppose this is the first step. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. And it's good to know that this is done at no charge for those users, of course, as well. So yeah, sorry, Kevin, did you want to ask Peter to?
Yeah, I just thought Peter, you know, with his perspective, he just put an interesting comment in the chat box, and I'm always grateful that Peter gets up so early and listens to these. Did you want to just say something, Peter, what you just put in the chat box?
G'day. Oh no, I was just more about the point that Thomas made about the readability of SDSs, and you know, a lot of codes of practice and hazard communication tools that you see that are produced by, you know, a range of people that tend to be written by, you know, OHS professionals for a target audience that has a much lower education level. And you know, I've run some of those things through those readability tools, and they're written for, you know, college educated, post college, you know, educated levels, and you know, that's one of the problems why people, you know, our end users just don't understand what gets written and the advice that's provided.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I mean, just looking at the project we did for Health Canada, you know, the SDSs, the hazard statements must line up with GHS, and we did find lots of holes in that. And also just the question I asked about defaulting to an A if there's a hazard statement missing, that could be a real trap for the unwary. So anyway, back to you, Thomas. Is there anything else you want to add before we move?
No, I just you know, I'm very thankful for the various research partners that we've had over the, you know, the last couple of years, including OCAL, and Melanie was involved with the project reference group, and you know, and Daniel, who's online today as well, and just others. So thank you to all of those, and to the funders, and I think, you know, I think my sense is that, you know, like I'm hoping that this is a tool that can help move the needle a bit further and help people move, you know, sort of do a reasonably basic assessment, and help with, you know, sort of, in essence, a tool that they didn't have before and has benefits, but I'm also aware of the limitations, and hopefully, you know, we can keep developing this further. So yeah, so thanks very much.
Thanks, Thomas, and for taking such a great lead in this area. Control banning badly needed in Canada, and for all you're doing. So, and to you too, Danielle, as well. Over to you, Kimberly.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, Thomas, so much for sharing. And we'll report back in as we get using it some more. And Danielle, yes, we'll have you at some future sessions to talk about some of your new tools that you're working on in conjunction. So it's all wonderful advances in continuous improvement. So